I know you see a Picasso every day of your life, right? Wrong. If you haven't yet seen this exhibition, you've got one more weekend to see this great Picasso and all the other fantastic cars and motorcycles in this show. Come in right now. Make it happen. David is a terrific guy. He's really smart, he's hardworking, and he's also a subscriber to the Audrain Museum Network. David, tell him how easy it is.
You hit that button there, all done.
Couldn't be easier. Thanks for doing it. Hello, and welcome to the Audrain Automobile Museum and our exhibition, Technological Marvels, A Story of Evolution. For this segment, I'm joined by David DiMuzio, the Executive Director and Chief Curator here at the Audrain, and we're here to talk about three vehicles which have a great deal in common and yet nothing in common. Can you solve that little conundrum for us, David?
I think so. I think so.
What do we got here first?
So the blue Dune Buggy, Meyers Manx, 1968. Bruce Meyers starts manufacturing these in 64. Very interesting man, great story. Not really a car guy. He's really better known as a boat builder, an artist, an engineer, and a musician. But was very involved in the Southern California desert racing scene, and really thought it would be interesting to build something that was a little more aesthetic and had a body on it, unlike a sandrail. So I think most likely influenced by his fiberglass boat building. So he comes up with this idea, comes up with a design, and there it is. And what is it? It's a kit. It's a $500 kit that if you, in 64, you could probably buy a derelict Volkswagen Bug for $50, $100. So for $600 to $1,000, you could actually build your own vehicle and power it however you felt like. So it might have a stock VW engine, which would be 40 horsepower. The Corvair six-cylinder Corvair engine started becoming popular, doubling the horsepower to maybe 80. And at 1,300 pounds, a lot of fun to drive off-road.
And of course, the Meyers Manx achieved immortality fairly early on in its life when it was featured in A Thomas Crown Affair, and Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway went flying across the dunes in a dune buggy, which I think is really, really funny because, of course, they went flying across the dunes in a dune buggy on Cape Cod. So not quite California, but nonetheless, it still spoke to the spirit of this. And it also made the Meyers Manx one of those rare cars which is classless. The most impecunious beachcomber could have a Meyers Manx, and also a millionaire could have a Meyers Manx. It didn't really matter.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that really made it so special. And of course, it's quite famously known that Bruce Meyers, brilliant engineer, great designer, not a great businessman, and before long, everybody was making buggies that looked like his. And so he didn't make a lot of money from making these vehicles. But he always made the best one. He didn't stop making the Meyers Manx because other people were ripping him off. He said, I still have something to say with this, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so, also the spirit of them, you don't see very many sort of quietly attired Meyers Manx. The one we have here, this blue one, is in a very typical candy apple, metal flake finish, and sort of brilliant blues, brilliant reds, yellows, oranges, and all the things that you really want to bring to a beach in the sun. Oh my God. Absolutely extraordinary. And the fact that there were so many copies, and that a lot of them had a little bit of a character of their own. There's something called the Beachcomber that had slightly deeper fenders, and some even had doors, and they did lots of things around the basic design to get away from Bruce Meyers' original design, but most of them were just direct knockoffs.
Yeah, we have one in the collection.
Exactly.
We'll show at some point.
And what's really fascinating is the fact that this is an example. Why is it in this show, technological marvels? Well, I think for two reasons, would you say?
Yeah, two reasons. I think the idea that you can customize and bring new technology to a car of your own doing. And I think the whole idea of technology that allows kit building is another part of this. But that's the beginning. The next car is what really, I think, really speaks to the moment. So
it is also a statement about the timelessness of the Dune Buggy.
Well, and they
especially
are.
the Meyers Manx.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you said, filmed in Cape Cod. Well, I spent summers North Shore of Boston, Plum Island, and I can remember two older guys, I was probably 10 years old, had dune buggies, Meyers Manx dune buggies. So even on the East Coast, they left an impression on young guys.
Absolutely, and a really terrific guy, a good friend of the Audrains, a fellow named Philip Seraphim, who is a absolutely manic car obsessive. Also, he grew up in Hawaii and the Southwest, and he was fascinated by the whole idea of dune buggies. And he had the opportunity to meet Bruce Meyers, and he's a venture capitalist sort of guy that likes to get into various businesses. And he thought, wouldn't it be great to revive this great mark? And so he purchased the company from Bruce before he passed away and relaunched the company, and is doing a really interesting thing, again, with technology, taking the basic idea of this fiberglass form, a very durable, strongly built, well-designed and well-constructed fiberglass form, and allowing it to be powered by a wide variety of power plants. You can do the classic VW or Corvair engine, or he's doing an all-electric version, and the one we have here in the show, a radial engined Meyers Manx. So an airplane engine Meyers Manx. How about that?
Why not? Why not? So, and that's to the point. I think the first thing he did was remaster the molds. So pretty much exactly the same body, but refreshing the molds. So you're getting a slightly crisper line and a really well built fiberglass body. Still being sold as kits now. Instead of $500, it's $6,000. But that's still quite cheap if you think about it. And you still requires you to come up with a donor car, Volkswagen or something, to put under it. And then lots of choices in engines, right? But now they're thinking, and they end up partnering with Radial Motion, an Australian company, who builds radial engines for lightweight aircraft. And the guys at Radial Motion, who are Volkswagen crazy, logically thought, we better test this engine on the ground before we put it in a plane. Actually built a Volkswagen version with a radial engine. Philip was aware of this, and they quickly partnered and came up with the idea of offering it as part of the kit. So not cheap, $30,000 to put a radial engine in your kit car, but 130 horsepower.
In a vehicle that weighs 1,200 pounds.
12 or 1,300 pounds. So it's amazing.
It's all
amazing
about power
performance.
to weight ratio.
That's right. And we have a great video of it being driven with Philip and Jay Leno. Very interesting sound.
Yes.
So I think the driving experience is special with this engine as well.
And one of the things also that Radial Motion does, as opposed to, I remember radial engined airplanes. Some friends of mine had some radial engined airplanes, and they were absolutely amazing. However, you didn't want to stand anywhere near one while they were being started.
Right.
Because, first of all, you thought that they were going to hurl themselves out of existence, but the amount of oil and debris that they would hurl around was absolutely astonishing.
Yeah.
And they have solved that problem. This is actually a smokeless radial engine, which is quite the miracle.
Yeah.
And this is also water cooled, so it's much easier to live with. So you don't have to worry about making sure that it's always moving, because an airplane, of course, is always moving. So cooling is not really an issue with an airplane.
No,
but you don't want your air-cooled radial engine to sit in traffic. That would be
it's not so obvious. There are fins on the heads, which give additional cooling, but clearly the water cooling is
Suggest,
essential given that you're not going in any high speed compared to an airplane. So,
Exactly. And one other thing I wanted to mention, because this is the thing that was quite interesting to me, is the fact that, of course, the traditional gasoline-powered Volkswagen, as it were, or Corvair-powered cars, and these radial cars, this is the prototype, are sold as kits. The electric cars are actually going to be sold as Meyers Manx as complete cars.
yeah.
So that's an interesting point as well.
It's really great that he's continuing the heritage and legacy of Meyers offering a kit. I think that'll still remain very popular. I think the technology involved with the electric car and the fact that it's a new design, it deserves to be a car you buy already built. So lots of interesting options. I think they're going to do a great job carrying this tradition forward. So I'm hoping we end up with electric Manx as well.
Manx. You know we will.
Yeah.
We have to. We've got Meyers Manx in the blood here in the collection. Now, the next car we're going to look at has something in common with these two cars, in that perhaps it's all about, well, it's not all about the drivetrain, but the drivetrain is certainly at the heart of what makes this car different. Let's take a look, David.
Okay.
So we'll solve the mystery for our viewers and just cut right to the point, okay? This looks like a 356, but it's actually an Emory Outlaw. So what does it have in common with our two Meyers Manx? The fact that you can choose whatever engine you want to put into what looks like a 356.
That's right.
In this case, it's got a 2.6 liter 911 engine putting out 250 horsepower, a far cry from the 90 horsepower that this car put out when new. And it also uses modern technology to, in my mind, totally transform the basic 356. This is not a modified 356. This is an Emory.
Yeah. It's a 911 engine with 2 cylinders cut off. So a 4-cylinder 911, if you will. And it's a lot of interesting things. Reinforced chassis, 911 suspension, transmission. But at the same time, you drive this car. How many cars? We must have 60 Porsches in the collections now. This is by far, I think, my favorite to drive. Why is that? I think, unlike some other heavily modified Porsches, it's still, there's something about driving it, you still feel like you're in a 356, but it's, what, 250 horsepower now? Oh my gosh.
So this is why you come to the Audrain Museum Network, to see, and it's not just with me and Jay, it's with me and David now. You see, I completely disagree with you, David. This is an amazing car to drive, there we agree. I don't think it feels like a 356 at all, and it's not bad that it doesn't. I love 356s, I love the way they feel. I think that Emory and his crew have done such a brilliant job of really reinventing the spirit of a 356.
Well, maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yeah,
maybe.
This
the
is sort
spirit.
of a 356 as if it had been developed for another 30 years.
There's another famous reimagined Porsche.
Indeed. Which feels much more like the car it started from than this feels like a 356.
I'll have to disagree. I'm sorry.
But you know what we can agree on? It's an amazing car to drive, and it also, again, speaks much like the Meyers Manx do to something which is far more than the sum of its parts. It becomes something else. Anybody can make a beach buggy and throw an engine in it, and it's not going to be a Meyers Manx. And a lot of people can take a 356 and throw a bigger engine in it and maybe wider tires, and you're not going to get an Emory Outlaw out of it.
Yeah, and I think the backstory is a special part of it too. I think, Rod and his family and his team do a really great job. It's a really interesting shop to visit. There's a supreme sense of craftsmanship and pride that goes into their work. you really feel like you want to be part of that when you buy one of these.
And understanding how to use technology in a way to create a complete package that makes sense. It's not just pieces off of a shelf that somebody bolts together.
It's very well conceived. Yeah. So, and what a pleasure to drive.
No, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And this is a great example. All three of these vehicles, in some ways, very different. A VW-powered Meyers-Manx from the period, a radial-engined Meyers-Manx from today, and this Emory Outlaw, all give a great spin on what technology can deliver in the driving experience. And that's what you can see in this show, Technological Marvels, a story of evolution. Thanks, David.
Thank you.